Happy Sunday. I'm Reverend Kathy McCall, and I'm the minister at Unity North Spiritual Center in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. So welcome to our Sunday lesson on August 23rd, 2020. I'm glad you're with us today. We always say when we're actually meeting in person, we say, whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual path, you're welcome here, and we're glad you're with us. So I'll say that today, whether we meet in person or not. And take the time to go to our website, not just if you're new, but this is a great week for everybody to go because we have some exciting new events up and running. Please note our Good For You days coming up on starting September 18th. It's almost a week of virtual events that we would normally have in a healing fair. It's usually one day in person, but we're stretching it over the week because it's virtual. So there'll be classes and readings and healings. And the thing is, you can attend from wherever you're located in the country or the world. We're virtual, so please join us. And it starts on September 18th, Friday evening. It will be kicked off with a class, and I will teach the transformative power of dreams, one of my favorite subjects. So check it out. And then the other exciting event, which I said I had a surprise for you, and that is, you often hear me quote Matthew Fox. And I had booked him to come to our church, but because of the pandemic, it has been changed to a virtual event. So that's almost as exciting as meeting him live. But it's in some ways it's more exciting because people from all over can attend. And it will be Saturday, October 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Central Time or 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. And it's a 2.5-hour event. He will present for an hour and a half. And trust me, whatever he's speaking about, it's worth hearing. And then he'll do lead us in a body chant, take a short break, and then come back for some Q&A. So I am totally excited. Through all the years of ministry for me, he is really my favorite guest speaker, just because he is so deep and profound and so inspirational. He has so much to say, and he crosses all boundary lines. So just one of the foremost theologians, spiritual theologians in the world today. So please check out our website, unitynorthmn.org. And now I'll begin with the daily word, followed by our lesson. So just take a moment and get centered and still as we read the daily word today. And the word today is inner peace. The peace of God fills my mind, my heart, and my life. Quiet moments in a fragrant garden, a stroll by a lake or stream, or a visit to any place of beauty inspires a deep awareness of peace. I also enjoy peace in the company of friends, those with whom I have easy camaraderie and deep bonds. Growing in spiritual awareness, I claim inner peace wherever I am. True inner peace comes from deep within me. If I am feeling less than peaceful, I pause and breathe out worry, fear, and unhealthy concern. Giving my full attention to the divine presence within me, I breathe in a peace that soothes my emotions, calms my thoughts, and relaxes my body. As I continue to inhale peace and exhale concern, I move forward with renewed clarity and confidence. And from Isaiah 26:3, those of steadfast mind you keep in peace because they trust in you. And so we give thanks for inner peace. And so it is. Amen. So the talk today, synchronistically, is called Vision of Peace. At the end of the art period, the very young assistant to the nursery school teacher was checking the drawings of the 4-year-olds. And pausing before a blank sheet of paper on one desk, she inquired unwisely of its owner, "What's that?" "A boat," the little girl said. "But I don't see any boat." "Well, it just sank." You know, the courage to imagine. I love it. It's said that the way to peace, actually there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. But if it's up to each of us to be peace, how do we find it amidst the chaos, the real life tragedies, the predicaments and pain in our country, our families, our neighborhoods, and world communities? Our paths to peace are as individual as we are, like a diet tailored to your health needs, or the spiritual practices that bring you a sense of well-being. Your window to peace and its expression is yours to discover. It might be through creative expression, prayer, meditation, exercise, or other spiritual practices. Well, today I want to focus on creative expression and the power of imagination to bring peace. With the challenges that we face in our world today, we are invited to use our creative imaginations. It is essential that we have the courage to imagine way out of the box. Robert Fulghum, in one of his books, tells a great story. He writes, "I'm told that during an international competition many years ago, a man named Frank Marshall made what is often called the most beautiful move ever made on a chessboard. In a crucial game in which he was evenly matched with a Russian master player, Marshall found his queen under serious attack. Now, there were several avenues of escape, and since the queen is the most important offensive player, the spectators assumed Marshall would observe convention and move his queen to safety. So, deep in thought, Marshall picked up his queen, paused, and placed it down on the most illogical square of all, a square from which the queen could be captured by any of 3 hostile pieces. Marshall had sacrificed his queen, an unthinkable move at the time, to be made only in the most desperate of circumstances. Well, after much dismay, the opponent and the crowd realized that Marshall had actually made a brilliant move. It was clear that no matter how the queen was taken, his opponent would soon be in a losing position. Seeing the inevitable defeat, the Russian conceded the game. Well, the important part about this was that Marshall had suspended standard thinking long enough to even entertain the possibility of such a move. Fulghum goes on to say, "On the checklist of operating instructions for my life, this phrase often appears: is it time to sacrifice the queen?" Now hold that thought, he says, while I pull out a childhood reference. Remember Tinker Toys? Interconnecting wooden parts, spools, and rods that came in tall canisters? Still do, but the parts are all plastic now. Well, when I taught art, I used Tinker Toys in a test at the beginning of a term. I wanted to know something about the creative instincts of my students. So on a Monday, I would put out a small set of Tinker Toys in front of each student and give a deliberately brief and ambiguous assignment. Make something out of the Tinker Toys. You have 45 minutes today and each day for the rest of the week. A few students were completely derailed at first. They were hesitant to plunge in. The task seemed frivolous. They wanted to know more about what I wanted and waited to see what the rest of the class would do. Several others checked the instructions on the can and made something according to one of the sample models plans provided. Another group built something out of their own imaginations or worked at finding how high or how long a construction they could devise. Almost always, at least one student would break free of the constraints of the set and incorporate pencils, paper clips, string, notebook paper, any other object lying around the art studio, sometimes even leaving the class for a time to gather up soda straws from the cafeteria or small dry branches and sticks from the schoolyard. And once I had a student who worked experimentally with Tinker Toys whenever he had free time. His constructions filled a storeroom in the art studio and a good part of his basement at home. I rejoiced at the presence of such a student. Here was an exceptionally creative mind at work. He had something to teach me. His presence meant that I had an unexpected teaching assistant in class whose creativity would infect the other students. I thought of him and others such students as queen sacrificers. They had QS. This can be applied in how we think, how we map out our day, how we run our businesses, how we cook our meals, how we create world peace. An entire culture can accept a particular story and through the faculty of the imagination give it great power. We have a choice what to believe and imagine. So which do you prefer to imagine? War and poverty or peace and plenty? We can create fear or bliss if we choose through the stories that we imagine, through the thoughts that we entertain. So through the power of imagination, we bring that which is formless into form. Imagination is our key to manifestation. And if we are having any problems in our lives, a prosperity challenge, a health challenge, or a difficult relationship, or no intimate relationship at all, or the issue of finding our right work, or confusion about our purpose and mission, our trouble finding inner peace with the current state of the world and its politics. Imagination is the way we bring our heart's desires into manifestation. Whatever it is, creative imagination is the key. A husband said to his wife, "We have nothing in our savings account, nothing in our checking account, nothing coming in. On the plus side, though, we've got $25,000 in our virtual reality account." Well, imagine your virtual reality account. Keep imagining it, affirming it, and having faith it will come. And it will. Just don't try spending it before it comes. Some of us may not think we're very creative. You know, we don't have to be an artist, a musician, a dancer, or a writer to be creative. Our QS, our queen sacrificer ability, does not have to be off the charts either. We are creative if we ever had to figure out how to accomplish a goal. Perhaps it was figuring out a plan to save money each month, or knowing what to say to someone. The artist is not a different kind of person, but every person is a different kind of artist. And creative thinking may simply mean the realization that there is no particular virtue in doing things the way they've always been done. Imagination is about moving beyond the rules to the right brain part of us. That's the mother within us, whether we're male or female, which gives birth to life in all its myriad forms. And creativity says we can get out of the box, we can suspend our feelings and sacrifice an old way of thinking for a new one. You know, we have a responsibility to use our imagination positively. We can ask ourselves, am I creating my life as a work of art? What are my spiritual gifts? Am I following my bliss? And am I helping to create peace on earth through my creative imagination? What do I see for the future? We need to trust our imagination. So author and theologian Matthew Fox, who I just mentioned we're hosting virtually, He was excommunicated by the Vatican many years back. He had been a Dominican priest for 34 years. And he was excommunicated for his radical teachings about original blessing. He said one reason for trusting our images is that we ourselves are trusted images. We are God's images, and God trusts us with that divine power of imagination. We have been entrusted by God in our capacity to imagine and to give birth. Part of trusting images and writing or living them is choosing which ones we need to write. And this ends up being how we use our creative imaginations to create our lives in positive ways according to the images that we choose to write. And then we become an artist. And we should forget about being professional artists and be free to let the right brain speak to us. Several years after a young man had been hired, he was called into the personal director's office. "What is the meaning of this?" the director asked. "When you applied for this job, you told us you had 5 years of experience. Now we discover this is your first job." "Well," the young man said, "in your advertisement you said you wanted somebody with imagination." Sometimes our wounding will lead us. Psychologist Jean Houston says, "One way toward holiness is being punched full of holes by life." She stresses wounding is an age-old training ground for teachers and healers in order to discover what's trying to be born in us from our wounds. What gift might be pressing for delivery? It's important to stop reciting this small story about it, the particulars, the details, and tell the larger story. Tell the tale anew, she says, this time with the wounding at the middle of the story. So as we begin to retell our story, we can consider, for example, that Winston Churchill, one of the world's most eloquent orators, was dyslexic and stuttered as a child, as did the actor James Earl Jones. When aviator Charles Lindbergh was a boy, he had frequent nightmares about falling from a high place. Instead of seeing a childhood illness that keeps you bedridden and isolated as the cause of you later becoming a writer or a monk, says James Hillman, how about imagining the call, arranging for the illness so you might practice for your later work? Instead of seeing children who stutter or cower or are excruciatingly shy as having developmental problems, consider they might have some great thing inside them that their symptoms are protecting, a gift. At the least, this approach recasts victimization as preparation and disability as training. The puzzle becomes then not how did I get this way or why did this happen to me, but what does my angel want with me? What is the gift or the prize? Well, there was a young boy who had a traumatic event that opened up his path and his creative gift. His name was Walter Elias, a city boy by birth, the son of a building contractor. Before Walter was 5, his parents moved from Chicago to a farm in Missouri. It was there on the farm Walter would have his first encounter with death. Walter was only 7 that particular summer afternoon. His dad was tending to farm chores. His mother was in the house. It was a perfect day for a young boy to go exploring. So just beyond a grove of willows was an apple orchard. There Walter could make believe to his heart's content that he was lost, which he never was, or that he had captured a wild animal, which he never had. But today was different. Directly in front of him, 30 feet away, perched in the low drooping branch of an apple tree and apparently sound asleep, was an owl. The boy froze. He remembered his father telling him owls rested during the day so they could hunt by night. What a wonderful pet that funny little bird would make. If only Walter could approach it without awakening it and snatch it from the tree. With each step, the boy winced to hear dry leaves crackle beneath his feet. The owl did not stir. Closer and closer, and at last young Walter was standing under the limb, just within range of the owl. Slowly, he reached up with one hand and he grabbed the bird by its legs. He had captured it. But the owl, waking suddenly, came alive like no other animal Walter had ever seen. In a flurry of beating wings, wild eyes, and frightened cries, it struggled against the boy's grasp. Walter, stunned, held on. Now it's difficult to imagine how what happened next happened. Perhaps the response was sparked by the gouging talons or by fear itself, but at some point, the terrified boy, still clinging to the terrified bird, flung it to the ground and stomped it to death. When it was over, a disbelieving Walter gazed down at the broken heap of feathers and blood, and he cried. Walter ran from the orchard, but later returned to bury the owl the little pet he would never know. Each shovelful of earth from the shallow grave was moistened with tears of deep regret. And for months thereafter, the owl visited Walter's dreams. Ashamed, he would tell no one of the incident until many years later. By then, the world forgave him. For that sad and lonely summer's day in the early spring of Walter Elias brought with it an awakening of the meaning of life. Walter never again killed a living creature. Although all the boyhood promises could not bring back that one little owl to life, through its death, a whole world of animals came into being, for it was then that a grieving 7-year-old, attempting to atone for a thoughtless misdeed, first sought to possess the animals of the forest while allowing them to be free by drawing them. Now the boy too is gone, but his drawings live on in the incomparable, undying art of Walter Elias Disney, Walt Disney. His wounding led him to his creativity, and all of us have been blessed. John Culhane said, Walt Disney told me, the way to make things work is not to worry and to get interested in some little idea that looks like fun, like imagining what Peter Pan would see as he flies over London with those eloquent hands, voice, eyes, and brow. Walt Disney made me see Peter Pan and the children flying high above the winding Thames River, the lamps of carriages glowing on the streets far below. Peter and the kids might even perch for a moment on the hands of Big Ben, Walt told me, just before heading for Neverland. Second star to the right and straight on till morning. I was mesmerized. So imagination is a very complex power because it involves the power of thought, changing our thinking, the power of creative visualization, where we constantly project the desire that we want onto our subconscious mind. It is a prayer, and visioning. And I've always believed that there's no such thing as creating a vision, but rather tuning into a vision. Like the song by John Lennon, he suggested we imagine the world a certain way through creative visualization. But he had already tuned into it, seeing it, to write the song. So we can create peace, save our species and our planet through creative imagination. And most of all, this power involves creating consciousness, a conscious awareness of God. Whether we call it a prosperity consciousness, a healing consciousness, a prayer or loving consciousness, it's an awareness of our oneness with God and one another. So this power of imagination is vast and complex. It's only one of the 12 spiritual powers that we teach about in Unity. Meister Eckhart, great German mystic, reminds us we are heirs to the fearful, creative power of God. And we have powers of birthing that are as destructive as they are awesome. Creativity is not tiptoeing through the tulips, whether we're talking of the powers to to make a strident submarine or nuclear missiles to go on it, or the power to create a symphony, or to build a table for the living room, or write a poem to a loved one. Creativity is so divine, it is awesome. So it is important we befriend it and learn to love it as much as we love anything in our lives. So we wrestle. Is our creativity to be for life or death, for people or profits, for justice or forgetfulness, for war or peace? And we can ask ourselves, do I create or do I destroy? Am I creating my bliss? And most of all, am I creating greater peace in myself and in my world? So in closing today, I want to again quote Robert Fulghum, just a couple of paragraphs. He said, maybe we should develop a Crayola crayon bomb as our next secret weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb. And every time a crisis developed, we would launch one. It would explode high in the air, explode softly, and send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to earth boxes of Crayolas. And we wouldn't go cheap either, not little boxes of 8, boxes of 64 with a sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and copper, magenta and peach and lime, amber and umber and all the rest. And people would smile, get a funny look on their faces, and cover the world with imagination. Guess that sounds absurd, doesn't it? A bit crazy and silly and weird. But I was reading in the paper today how much money Congress just set aside for weapons. And I think about what those weapons will do. And I'm not confused about what's weird and silly and crazy and absurd. And I'm not confused about the lack of or the need for imagination in low and high places. Pass the crayons, please. In closing today, R.L. Noss said, "Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go. Love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you." God bless you. Have a wonderful week.